I've noticed a lot lately in the work we've been doing that it almost feels like we're stepping out of our role, not necessarily fully into your manager's role, but you're now hiring yourself and replicating the work you used to do in a way that agents can do at least aspects of it, right? So you're having to think about your role from the outside in almost and figure out where do you delegate to agents? How do you evaluate what they're doing for you?
We're learning how to vibe code, right? We're learning how to build all of these tools, but are we building our skills as product managers now that we are, as business professionals, building sort of what would have been technical tools, right? For years, some people have just thrived in executing their job and never wanted to be a manager per se. But now with AI, they are increasingly having to not only execute on work, but also become directors. And going beyond just directors of documents and presentations, we're now vibe coding and building agents as individual business professionals, creating value in a world of AI. So today's episode, we're going to focus on the role change to value creator with AI and what that means for us and our work teams, especially with all of this value that we're creating resulting in AI fry and agent sprawl. So to discuss this here with me, I am joined by Bre'Ana Dean. Welcome.
Hello. Happy to
Good
be
morning.
here again, talking about all of these exciting topics.
Yes. As we kick off, we're talking about this agent sprawl. I want to ask you, what is the coolest tool you have recently built, and did you actually roll it out to the team and get adopted by the team?
I think the coolest one is the one that I'm still spending time building. And I think, like we'll talk about, there are levels to that AI usage and tool creation. So that's like the broader scale solution that I'm excited about, but haven't finished yet. So in terms of what I have completed, I think I've been experimenting with command centers. So creating, HTML dashboards, which is now super easy to do with AI, that just make it easier to, for teams that are collaborating to be able to access and filter and, slice and dice and look through different, all of the information we have to work through as a team. So that.
And did you roll it out to the team?
I did, yes. And one of my pod meetings yesterday, we looked at it and found so many opportunities to start automating what gets pulled into the dashboard and connecting it with other resources. And I think that ties in with this conversation too, because now we're having to move from that low level to integrating and thinking beyond that. So, yeah. What about you?
Similarly, I have this idea of like a command center for our whole team that just kind of manages the operations of what everyone is working on. And what has prevented me from getting that off the ground is that iterative approach of it's easy to build something, but then continuing to look at it and say what percent of, what I want this to do, is it actually doing, and continuing to build on it and iterate on it. So I haven't rolled it out to the team yet. In the process, though, I have actually managed to build an agent that is my IT developer for building apps, and like really start giving it a lot of skills. And so I can go consult my IT developer agent and say, hey, I want to continue building on this app. And I've personified the agent that's working on my apps. So
I love that.
Yeah. Warning, more apps coming.
It's a process. There's a lot involved there. So I'm sure by the time you roll it out, it will be really a more useful experience in solving a real problem.
So let's talk about the context of this conversation, because, we've been talking about this concept actually in previous episodes around people moving from this executor to the director, needing these skills of not only thinking about, what needs to be done, but directing AI to do it. It's a powerful momentum that we're seeing within businesses and within teams of individuals gaining these skills of directing. And of course, we have people who never wanted to be managers who are now having this responsibility. So what do you think about these skills that sort of the frontier professional needs to build, and what is the context that we're having this conversation in terms of people building these new skills?
Yeah, when you mentioned even, not necessarily wanting to be a manager, it just made me think about how I've noticed a lot lately in the work we've been doing that it almost feels like we're stepping out of our role, not necessarily fully into your manager's role, but you're now hiring yourself and replicating the work you used to do in a way that agents can do at least aspects of it, right? So you're having to think about your role from the outside in almost and figure out, where do you delegate to agents? How do you evaluate what they're doing for you? And I think that now involves you still doing a lot of the specific execution pieces, but also having to navigate wearing different hats and thinking at different altitudes about your work now. So like at that lowest level, and we've talked about some of this already, but when it comes to doing a specific task within your role, that's where you need that, number one, the delegation skill, which is a little bit of a higher order skill of really framing the task instead of just doing it. Like what is the goal of doing that task? What does good look like for that task? And then being able to evaluate the output and judge the quality of something within your domain. So we've talked a lot about judgment, but I think taste has been something that started to come to mind for me too more often now. And I think they're similar, but especially as we talk about seniority and experience, judgment tends to come more from that experience of actually doing the thing. But taste is something you could have even if you've never built the thing, right? Like you just know what good looks like, you know what will resonate with other people. So I think those are some of those like execution oriented skills, right? Like the judgment, the taste, the delegation, framing the task. And then you move into more of the orchestration of the work. Like, how do you think about the different moving parts together? So it's not just this task, but on a monthly basis or for one core responsibility in your role, how are you now handling that in a more repeatable way and more creating that system around the work that you do? And I think systems thinking will probably come up a lot, but I think that orchestration mindset and the systems thinking comes in there. And then moving to start thinking beyond even your role to how does this fit into what else is happening in my team and in my org, and that broader systems thinking and workflow redesign. So
Yeah, that is exactly kind of, I think everyone in sort of AI adopting organizations are experiencing this, where they're using AI in their own personal productivity. And there's new direction and director skills there of things that you mentioned, of like being able to frame the problem, judgment, being able to judge quality, all of those things. But then there is, for many business professionals, being asked to now start to use AI across the team to streamline workflows and create better processes. In fact, Microsoft's Work Trend Index describes frontier professionals as workers redesigning workflows, orchestrating agents across multiple step tasks, and building repeatable practices. This is a whole another set of skills that is going beyond personal productivity to creating agents and directing agents and building apps, autonomous agents that are working on behalf of you. And you're talking about skills like systems thinking and being able to craft those types of solutions that are beyond your own personal productivity. Those are serious skills and serious muscles for an individual, business professional to start developing in order to kind of carry their professional skills forward in an AI world. So that is really huge. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
yeah, I mean, I think it just it's good news in a time where there are a lot of negative implications that we're thinking through around AI, but I think that's a positive, right? Like on one hand, yes, in some cases we're losing value that we used to have in terms of how we execute. And now that's maybe not as valuable in some cases, right? Like because you can just use AI to execute tasks. But now we have more opportunities to develop those higher order skills. So I think the more we embrace that and approach our use of AI through the lens of how, maximizing your growth in those areas, I think that's the positive.
And I think you and I wanted to also emphasize like time is actually a real thing in growing these kind of skills. One of the reasons I haven't necessarily taken my app forward that I want to roll out to the team is, time for that iterative approach. It takes a lot of thought to make sure I've got all of the requirements. And then I'm in many cases, kind of using AI tools to create this application. It's an iterative approach that I have to then basically run my own software development lifecycle
Literally.
of like testing it and making sure that it's valuable and things like that. So there's time invested in building the skills. There's time invested in experimenting and building this actual tool and making sure it's valuable. And time is a real challenge.
For sure. Yeah. And I think that will touch on that as we talk about the broader implications around the team and organizational level. But if we're asked to just complete the task and use AI, then we can do that. But if we really do want to be able to grow in those and grow those skills and integrate and scale these systems that we're building, then we do need that time because like you said, we're compressing what used to take so long. And now we have the ability to do it independently, but we still need to go through all of those steps, right? Like you said, the software life cycle, thinking about it, the solutions we're building like products and thinking about the user experience, thinking about the back end and how it's implemented, thinking about how you're going to maintain it and govern it and all those things. So we're executing faster, but we have to remember that we still need the time to do everything else around packaging that solution and maintaining it.
Yeah. Yep. So let's think about the implications though, as we let's say we get the time to build all these tools. We build the skills to be able to direct and build all of these tools on our team. So we have now, fast forwarding in the future, 15 agents on our team and all these dashboards that individuals have built. We now have a problem on our hands. We have something real called agent sprawl, which Salesforce's 2026 connectivity benchmark talks about the average organization now using 12 or more AI agents, but 50% operating in silos and not really coordinated. And then IBM actually wrote about this concept of AI brain fry, where people are using so many different tools, different AI tools, and the value of the AI tools as they collectively add more and more and more is declining. So such a huge implication of all of this power, of all of us gaining these skills, to direct AI, to build apps, to build agents on our teams, kind of like a wave turning over and landing that power on the teams has this, now we have this agent sprawl. We have all of these AI tools that everyone has built. So how is that changing how we work as a team, our team culture, how we think about our individual professional skills, and some of the tensions that we have on the team?
Yeah, and I think it's something we had to go through, right? Like we had to experiment. We all had to get our hands dirty. We had to see what was possible. So I think we've all gone through that now. And it, like you said, we need to make sense of it. We need to clean things up, integrate, simplify. And going back to the capabilities we talked about, I think now we all start, maybe that's where we start differentiating, like where we best play a role in all of that, because we still need the people who are, cranking out the solutions and building and innovating. We also need those specialists in some cases who can, within whatever domain we're working in, really make sure we're thinking about that function, whether it's, design, for example, or marketing, whatever it is, and making sure we capture and translate what good looks like for what we produce in that domain, how we like what the right processes are for how you approach work in that space, and then helping us translate that into the solutions we build with agents. Because I think as we can't all do that, it's not efficient for us all to be thinking about those things, and it's not effective if we all don't have the right expertise in a certain function or specialty. Because I think right now because we have these capabilities with AI to now execute more quickly across different domains, we might be asked to do things where we don't, we have to wear more hats now, right? Like we don't always have that expertise in all of the things we're now doing with AI. So
Yeah.
making sure that within the teams and orgs, we identify where we do have the domain and functional expertise, who the designer is or the design team who's now figuring out how do we all approach design and use agents to design solutions, or where that marketing expertise is coming from to help us all when we have to create messages with AI, whatever it is. And I think Elizabeth Stone, Chief Product and Technology Officer at Netflix, she talked a lot about this in a recent interview, just about how, what Netflix looks for in terms of talent is shifting towards more systems thinking. And I think it was interesting that she also acknowledged that while, yes, we are becoming more generalists in a sense, in most cases, there is still value in those specialists who can help us better approach those different domains within our org. So I think there are some things we'll all have in common in terms of core skills for the frontier worker, but I think we can also differentiate ourselves based on where we can add value.
So what I hear you saying is, it's great that we're building skills to build things. That's part of our skill building as professionals who are now using AI tools. But there's a maturity beyond that where we actually need to think about not only what good looks like, but are there specialists needed on the team who might be able to take on that what good looks like? Can you think of an example of like where, all of us are generalists, all of us are building tools, but where we might need a specialist to kind of determine what good looks like for a specific deliverable?
Yeah. I mean, the one, I guess maybe two examples. One that Elizabeth Stone mentioned in that Netflix interview about Netflix's culture was the design practice. So at Netflix, really leaning on designers to, instead of everyone and all of the employees who are designing solutions, thinking that they have enough design expertise now to use agents because they have the capability. Instead, really ensuring that the designers who do have that domain expertise and specialization are in charge of defining that and creating the processes and principles around design at Netflix that everyone else can then adopt. And I think it could be similar in our team too, like in the work we do for skilling or for anyone who does, skilling or learning and development, right? Like thinking about defining, having a special instructional design, right? Like instructional designers know that's what they've always done. They've translated expertise from certain domains and really helped ensure that it's effective learning. And now that we have AI being used more for education and learning and development and things like that, training, I think that's where instructional designers, for example, could now play a role in infusing that practice into the AI tools that we're building and the systems we're using to create training. So
yeah, that's really good. And it makes me think about different ways to start maturing as individuals and also as teams in terms of recognizing where we need that specialist expertise in order to create better outputs from AI. And so you brought designing as a specific potentially specialist skill. One of the other components that I was thinking about is really governance. So to move from a team or individuals experimenting with a ton of different, building apps and agents, and all of a sudden we have 13, different agents on the team and 12 different apps. We as individuals have to start thinking about a governance mindset and what is actually going to prevent sort of AI fry and this reduction of productivity because of the proliferation of tools. And then there's an idea that you could sort of outsource that governance or give some specialist on the team or create a special team that's responsible for governance. But I kind of think that it might be a combination of both. There might be some specialists that considers what governance success looks like and making sure that we don't have this agent sprawl. But there also might need to be like a building of that skill in individuals now that they can vibe code and build agents and all of these things to think about governing on the team
For
in a
sure.
different way.
Yeah, I think as we all become more generalized, we need bits of that expertise across different areas. And then where we do have our specialized focuses, we have to now apply it more generally to help with those broader solutions. So it's like we're wearing multiple hats, looking more broadly now. So I think that's the shift we're in.
Yeah. Another maturity sort of skill that I saw recently, an article from Charles Lamanna, who was one of the engineering leaders at Microsoft, talking about how his team has transformed in terms of how they're coding. I think some of these coding, and you and I have brought up a few coding articles, I feel like some of these coding articles have direct sort of similar factors happening in business teams as well.
For sure,
So
yeah.
his team talked about how, hey, they can now code way more content, they can build way more with AI. And he talked about needing to build or having his team build the skills of that director, designer, orchestrator. But he also brought up some interesting factors around, do you decide to build more because you could build more, or do you build better and focus on quality? And I think that's something for business teams to think about as we grow in maturity is, are we just having 13 agents on our team because everybody experimented and built agents and now we have 13 mediocre agents on the team? Or do we have some really good quality agents or apps that people have built and are maintaining that continue to provide value for the team and, create a great experience for people on the team and also, make our team sort of attractive to other people when they are interviewing and want to join. So we're talking about like retention and also recruiting, where our team is actually operating not with 13 experimental agents, but with a smaller set of really good quality tools that we have built with our
Yeah.
AI capability on the team.
And I think that just further emphasizes too just how valuable those soft skills will continue to be, because like you said, it's more valuable now to be able to really identify the right use cases for AI and for agents. And an example just came to mind, like the command center example I mentioned that I built. I've played around with that for a few different things. And then I started to realize most of these tools produce very similar UX, UI, user interfaces. And it highlights the fact that as we all do this experimenting and use AI and build agents, they tend to be pretty similar if you're not bringing a unique point of view, that product mindset that we talked about of really thinking about who you're building it for, what problem you're solving, what the experience will be. If you don't bring that, then you tend to just get the baseline average output that AI would generate for most people, and it'll look just like the solution the next person built. And that's where, as I've been building different things, I realized I really had to bring more guidance and perspective to my prompts and how I worked with the agents. And so I think really being able to differentiate what you produce with AI is a big skill right now, because as we all do build these solutions, they tend to be pretty similar in a lot of cases. Just like we've talked about in the past with the AI generated LinkedIn posts, or how everyone can now spot what's been produced by AI because of it's, there are those core patterns. So now there's value in being able to differentiate and really bring your unique voice and point of view and how you approach problems and solutions to things.
Yeah. So I love that. As I think about, what can we as individuals do to create the future. That's what we keep talking about, that we want on our teams. What you're talking about as an individual is thinking through what you're building as kind of a product. And one of the components of that product is a unique perspective or a unique design that represents like well thought out need. So one of the overarching thoughts that we've had is, we're learning how to vibe code, right? We're learning how to build all of these tools, but are we building our skills as product managers now that we are as business professionals building sort of what would have been technical tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so as a product manager, you know what your audience and what your target user wants. And and are designing for that person. You're thinking about building quality. You're thinking about building against what their needs are. So as an individual who's building tools and capabilities on your team, you need to be thinking about not only a good design, but what your colleagues actually want, what they need, what's solving a problem for them. And so there's a whole bunch of product management type skills that an individual vibe coder, value creator on a team needs to develop in order to make sure that we're delivering value on the team, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think we're definitely moving from the era where more people should learn how to code to where we've been. Maybe more people should learn how to vibe code. And now it's, really important to learn how to think like a product manager and really understand not just the how your solution was built, but think about the solution itself. And there's a lot there. So it's a huge skill set. And I think that's where if you lean in there, if more people start leaning in there, that along with being able to vibe code will be important. And I think for example, one big part of that too is how you talk about your solution, right? Like product managers
Yeah.
have to represent that and really pitch like, what's the value prop of this? What are those user stories? All of those things, being able to, especially because like I said, like we touched on, if we've all now built an agent, that's not the value anymore that you've built this thing. It's like, okay, but what is this doing for me? Why is it worth my time to now go adopt this yet another solution? And how is it going to solve a problem that I have? So being able
Exactly.
to frame that and communicate that is equally as important.
Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that an individual does as a product manager is they think about maintenance and updates, and they also think about measuring success and whether what they have built is meeting the mark. So I think that is part of moving from, individual experimentation into more of a mature use of AI is actually having some of that thought process there. And, going back to Charles Lamana's article there, I think there's an emphasis on not more, but fewer, better quality tools that people can trust, that they're actually working, that they're actually maintained. And for us as a team, it means actually moving more towards working together on a specific solution or on a tool or an agent to make sure that it's really effective, rather than just this experimentation, which is I built this, I built this, I built this on the team. And then it's a whole new set of leadership skills as well to not only model. I think there was a period where as a leader, I'm working to model experimentation. I'm looking to model, hey, I just jumped in and built this app or this agent. But now as a leader, I also need to model, governing and sort of putting some boundaries around the proliferation of agents and then narrowing the focus down to what's valuable, making sure that if people on the team have built something, that there's resource in the resource management piece of the team, that there's time in there for maintaining or iterating on those important now, cross workflow tools that potentially individual rock stars on the team have risen up to build. So there's a new set of leadership skills as well around AI development on teams.
Yeah. And I think I see that as good news, right? Like may be tempting to focus on, we have to acknowledge that, yes, AI is now doing more of the execution. So in roles where that was the focus now, that's shifting the nature of work, but that is allowing us in a lot of cases to have more opportunities to build those higher order skills, the leadership skills, the human skills that we need for designing solutions for other people and communicating them and maintaining them and all of that. So I think that's the pro in the situation, the positive outcome. And like you said too, I think time just keeps coming back to mind, right? Like building those skills for ourselves takes time. So I think we have to recognize that, and organizations have to recognize that we're using different skills than we were using before. Even though AI can execute faster, there's a learning curve for people to now be wearing different hats in their roles and building those new skills. And like we talked about with the product mindset and the product manager hat that we have to wear now, that is a big set of responsibilities and behaviors and processes. So that takes time too. So we have to embrace that we move faster with maybe the executing and the prototyping, but we still need time for the skill building and the end-to-end solutioning that needs to happen.
Yeah, practically speaking, I think, some organizations, as they're attempting to have people adopt AI, will give everyone an assignment. Like, everyone needs to have done or built XYZ, or every manager has to show that they have done some sort of bigger cross organizational process, that they built something with AI. And I think that's great to get the experiment engines going. But also I think there's a maturity and a next step to that, which is, how are we assessing those tools, the value, what are we going to distill down to our top use tools? And then what are our measurements for success for these tools that we've used, and how are we creating governance and maintenance around those tools on the team.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a great call out, because if you're not rewarding and valuing that type of work, then it can be invisible in some cases if we're not. And also that maybe that's another opportunity too, is building more visibility around that aspect of what goes into the work. So you're not just wanting to see the number of agents that have been built, but wanting to, making space for sharing the solution design and just more of that like product life cycle.
Yes.
Because there's value in that, and value in connecting the dots across different solutions that are being built, even though you can't see that happening at the time, and it might seem like that work is happening more slowly. We should be rewarding that. So
I love how you bring up rewards, because these are the cultural things that change our team, right? The praise, verbal praise that people get, maybe the things that are put on people's performance, those are all things that kind of change the expectations of your role, and also the culture on the team, what we're pointing out as like positive. And so I think, as we talked about, I think there's a maturity there of like initially maybe praising that experimentation, but just not stopping there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And continuing to create and reward people for value, for quality, for
integration,
for integration across the team, for success metrics, and bringing that together with cultural change on the team.
Yeah, I think that's the transition we're in. I hope we're all moving in the right direction, because like we talked about, we had to go through the experimentation phase, but it's time to mature and clean things up.
Yep. Did I build my own tool, or did I build everyone's tool? And maybe there will be an ongoing aspect of that. Like, I think there's still so much technology that's being released, so much capability that's being released. So, maybe there's always two layers of experimenting with new capability, and, hey, I built this and let me show you what I built. So maybe you can learn from what I built and what I'm doing and how I'm leveraging the tools. But then aspects where we are moving certain capabilities into a mature state. So
yeah. For sure.
Now, a business leader is a development leader, yes, and individuals are product managers.
We're all product managers. Yep.
Well, I want to leave our audience with a closing question. So, how is each person on your team becoming a value creator, and how is that changing your role and your team? And the most successful AI workers won't simply be the people who master the latest tools, but they will be the people who learn to direct and create value for the team, developing others and shaping how the team works. So, this has been a great discussion. Thank you, Bre'Ana.
Thank you for the next one.
Excited for the next one?
Yes.
Until next time, we'll say back to work.
Whose loving is mere falling